Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tea with Z. My name is Zimmer Solanki, and it's so good to be back after a week, and wasn't definitely a week holiday, that's for sure. But I definitely did miss jumping onto these episodes last week. And if you noticed, yeah, well, I was away, and if you flicked on the TV, you may have guessed why. But before we jump into that, if you haven't gotten your tea, your cuppa, your coffee, whatever it is, go and grab that now because we're about to jump into today's episode. And also feel free to drop a comment in the comment section below as well, because as you know, we love to make this as interactive as possible because interaction drives conversation and conversation drives interaction, doesn't it? And the best way that we can converse between one another is through the comments. So feel free just to jump on and say hi because I love to hear from each and every one of you in the morning as well. So jump on, say hi, and if you are watching a replay, do the same because as you know, I respond to each and every comment. Now, wherever you are in the world right now, and I say the world because even though that we've been handling a rain bomb on the eastern coast of Australia, and that's why I didn't join you last week. You flipped to the other side of the world, and there's ongoing and emerging conflicts happening as well. So wherever we're kind of flicking on the news at the moment, we're seeing a lot of devastation, a lot of hardship, a lot of confusion and panic and anxiety and worry because we're in such a volatile state at the moment. And as a result of that, going through some of that, and no way we went through a war last week, 100%. But for some people, it definitely felt like losing everything or even losing loved ones. And my heart definitely goes out to those people that have lost loved ones as a result of the weather disaster in Australia last week. Also, shout out to all of the Shane Warne fans as well for losing and a great Australian icon as well. And when we look at all of these big stories, these big news stories, these big events, and when we start to compound them into short periods of time, it feels like everything is happening at once. Everything is imploding at once. And sometimes handling a crisis can become very, very difficult. Now, what I wanted to do today and even throughout this week is really start to, I guess, share some stories. And feel free as well, if you've got short stories to share and you want to jump on to an episode of Tea with Z and just even have a chat about it, feel free to drop a comment or send me a DM, so a direct message. And I'll be more than happy to jump on with you and have a chat. So you can share your story, you can share your insights, you can share your lessons learned to help empower others along their own journeys as well. Because as healthpreneurs, we all value health in any way, shape, or form. And at the core of health is our own well-being and the well-being of our community. And when we see disasters happen, you really see the power of community come together. And now we definitely suffered some damage with our place. Our neighbors suffered a lot more. You know, we were running two pumps to pumping out the water and obviously mitigating and minimizing the damage that could have been caused as well for our homes and our surrounding homes. And when you look at that, when you look at what could have happened, it could have obviously been a lot worse. And everybody asks, "Oh, Zamil, how were you? How were you?" And I always say, "Well, it's so relative, isn't it? It's so relative. You know, we didn't have to clamber up onto the roof with Syra and waiting to be rescued. We didn't have to uh, get evacuated, thankfully. Yet we know people that did. We know people that had to be evacuated, and we're seeing that even on the other side of the world, where the threat of war, the threat of conflict, the threat of bombings, the threat of weather, whatever it might be, has resulted in people getting their houses, or sorry, their homes displaced. And when you think about that, when we go to handle a crisis, and for me, what the biggest lesson learned this week or this past week was the need to effectively communicate. And I've covered this off before in terms of our team and our leadership, but when we're handling crisis, it's the lack of information, it's misinformation, and it's also information directed at different things without a level of understanding as to what is happening on the ground, which results in increased panic, anxiety, and worry. And I was chatting with a colleague, and this colleague unfortunately lost quite a bit of stuff as a result of this weather event. And this colleague was just telling me, and he articulated it really well. It's like watching a car crash happen. You literally cannot take your eyes off it. You can just see this water rising, and there's not much that you can do. It's just happening in slow motion. It's playing out like a movie, and you know what's going to happen. You can try to mitigate risks and all of that, but you can see it unfold. And when you're seeing it unfold, it's like watching a car crash happen. And you just glue your eyes to it. And that was largely what I was doing. I was engrossed in what was happening, and I was trying to figure out what was happening myself, because obviously the lines of communication and understanding from from the media and other sources was, I guess, missing key parts of information as to our own situation. So what we did is we called in, we checked on our neighbors, and we used the collective resources around our community to help quantify and understand what was happening, what was happening, and to help empower one another to get through that crisis together. And so my question for you is that when handling a crisis in your own world, do you shut down? Do you isolate? Do you close off yourself to other communication, or do you seek answers by asking right questions? Do you go out and look for answers within your community, not just mainstream media? Do you go and ask your neighbor as to what might be happening with them, how we can support one another, what support we need? And what I found by reaching out to others is that they offered support back in turn. And as a result of that, it strengthened the bond between us and strengthened the bond between our community. And we see that in many times, community is built on elements of crisis. That is where community rises. You see, just in Brisbane alone, and if you haven't heard of it, it's called the Mud Army. It's a massive volunteer-based cleanup crew that go in and help clean up all the mud, clean up all the debris, destruction in people's homes, and help them reset, normalize again, and help them clean up after all of this devastation. And you look at that, and I was listening based on information from the 2011 floods. So that was our last major, like almost as big as this disaster. And that was just over a decade ago. And there were 25,000 volunteers ready at that call to arms to go and help out and assist. And so my question to you is, when you're handling a crisis or when you're in a crisis, do you close off or do you seek the support of the community? And if you don't seek the support of the community, why? Why don't you actually seek the support of community? Because this is one of the greatest lessons, is that you don't have to handle a crisis alone. There are so many amazing people out there that are willing to help, but don't know how or who to help if they cannot see you putting up your hand. It's just like being in the surf. When you're taught as a nipper, as a young child, when you go out into the surf, even as an adult into the surf, if you need support, you need help, you raise your hand. You raise your hand. Same thing in school. You raise your hand. And that identifies that you need support, you need help. And as a result of that, help comes to those that ask. Help is given to those that seek it. And if we don't seek the support and help during a crisis, when can we actually seek support and help? And that's totally cool. That's totally cool. And if you see somebody that might not be seeking support or help, but clearly might need it, well, what are the ways in which you can tactically resolve that? Because there might be elements of ego there. There might be elements of ego that they're in denial, they're deflecting, they're blaming, but most likely, they're denying the situation. And as a result of that, they're not getting the help that they might need. And so what is the opportunity for you then to help them get the help they need, to break down those walls, actually use the support around when a crisis is happening? So my question to you, when in a crisis, what support are you using? What support systems are you actually leveraging? And how can you make sure that you're not just seeking support, but you're offering support at the same time? So just think about that from your community space and along even your own healthpreneurial space. We've all been touched by different crises in the past. What are the questions you're asking yourselves, your team, your community, your family, to help give them some answers, to create some levels of certainty, to reduce anxiety, and to help get through that crisis a lot quicker. So that's it from me today. Food for thought. Food for thought as we go into this new week. And for so many people around Australia right now, we're still in the thick of it. While Brisbane, the storm has moved down south, now our neighbors down south are definitely feeling that. So feel free, shoot me a DM, shoot me a message, whatever it is, obviously, whatever I can even do to support. I'm part of this community as well. And if it's even just referring people on, I myself went out to Facebook and asked for support. And some amazing mates that I haven't spoken to in years, that I've known from school, came out and said, hey, mate, have a chat to this guy, have a chat to this guy. They'll help you. And it's amazing, the power of community. Even though it doesn't, you don't necessarily keep in touch with that community. But when a crisis happens, we tend to band together. And so utilize it. Utilize it and also contribute to it. So that's it from me today. Have an absolutely incredible day. And when handling a crisis, what does your community look like? Who would you turn to? Do you have them on speed dial? Are they on your top of your contact list? What is your game plan? And we're going to jump into that in tomorrow's episode a bit more as well. So that's it from me. Have an incredible day and stay safe, stay well, and I look forward to catching up with you on another episode of Tea with Z tomorrow. Bye for now.